Hey guys, Agent of Doubt here, world's worst social justice warrior white knight, and it's the 30th of November now, a few days after Thanksgiving, and I felt like a rant about what I'm not thankful for, you know. I'm in a mood because the federal government has abandoned us during this pandemic. And, it's important for me to call out the big elephant in the room with that. It is the source of a lot of the depression and fatigue that I'm seeing in everyone. We have been abandoned. How so, you ask? Well, let me just dive into this. So, we're in like the 9th month of this pandemic now, and we all got a stimulus check in America for $1,200 to last 9 months. Yeah. It's not enough. It's not enough. And the people are screaming it's not enough. And, of course, like everything in America, it turned political. And the second stimulus was stalled in Congress. They can't come to an agreement that the American people need more help than that. And meanwhile, I feel like we've all been abandoned. Knowing how bad this pandemic was going to be, there was no federal leadership. Our president put it all on the governors, and it was like if something went good, he wanted to get the praise at his rallies. But if there was anything bad, he could always blame it on the governors, and say, well, this was, something that was handled locally, and that was the problem. Except for, it's the whole goddamn country that's hurting right now. Every damn state is having COVID-19 numbers soar. Every state is red on any map where they like to color in the boxes and tell you how good your state is doing by what color it is. Every fucking state is red. And in the face of that, there was no federal leadership on things like, say, that there's going to be like a second and third wave coming. Maybe make a push to train up at least CNAs, if not nurses. You know that you're going to lose some to this pandemic. You know that some are going to be put out of work for a little while. You know that you're going to have an explosion of cases. Nothing. No federal program for that. No federal program for making extra hospitals. Except for, turning stadiums into, makeshift hospitals for a little while. There was that. But not on a federal level. That was state by state. There was no anything to support the infrastructure of our healthcare system in the manpower. I just went to a grocery store, late night shopping, because the stores realize that if they're open, round the clock, then they can spread out the people that do go to the store. And you know what? Once again, we have a toilet paper shortage. And I can forgive the fact that there's no Barks root beer or peanut butter M&Ms because I'm a fat guy, and I get it. As long as there's food, fine. I'll eat something else. But everybody needs shit tickets, right? And the scare has come back. We all panicked when it first happened. Now we're all panicking again. Am I going to be able to wipe my fucking ass? Who could have stepped in? Maybe... There's no leadership on that. There's no leadership on what shortages whatsoever. Masks, of course, our president will like to blame it on, either local officials or Obama did it. Obama was the one who didn't restock something. And I'm like, motherfucker, you're in your 4th year. You had 3 years if you saw that there was a shortage, that you could have been working on the shortage. Don't fucking put it off on Obama for a shortage that you're experiencing in your 4th fucking year of presidency. I'm gonna get a little colorful because I'm in a mood. Just letting you know. Yeah. There was no national guidance on reopening schools. In fact, I just learned today that they're going to be reopening schools in New York. There was a big press conference with Bill de Blasio, and I'm like, cases are spiking. We're headed into another surge, the winter surge. Why the fuck are you trying to reopen more schools? This does not make sense, but the method in which schools are reopening across the country is scattershot. The rules are different in every school district because there's no national guidance. Because Trump doesn't want national guidance on anything, because then the blame falls back on him. He wants states to figure it out on their own. You're on your own. The federal government has abandoned us. And a lot of these school boards that are having to make these decisions on a local level, they don't understand airborne viruses. They don't understand vectors. They don't understand how to prevent transmission. They don't understand this testing. They're not getting guidance. And in Texas, their governor and their attorney general will actually punish the local leaders who try to save their citizenry by implementing the measures that would save more lives. Such as, sending everybody at home to do teleschool. In Texas, they're actually, it's not that they're just like not helping. They're actively hurting the problem. And if we had national guidance, we wouldn't have situations like this where on a local level, below the state level, you have people doing the right thing and getting punished for it by the governor and that administration. And the federal government there is not there to step in and say, oh wait, hey, we have this national guideline that we put out and they're actually doing the right thing. They've abandoned us. Meanwhile, also in Texas, they're using the National Guard to guard all the bodies that are piling up outside of the hospitals. Because that's a good use of our resources, is to just mobilize the National Guard to guard dead bodies instead of, mobilize them to protect the living and, do anything but just stand there and watch the bodies pile up. That's, ugh. Also on a federal level, earlier in this year, the CDC lied to us about masks. They lied and said that they weren't very good and that we shouldn't buy them so that they could try to buy them up for hospitals. They lied to everyone. And then, when they came out and said, oh no, now we know that masks work, it undermined everyone's confidence in anything the government is saying. And why did they lie to us? Probably it was a plan hatched from the top. Pressure put down on them from the president saying, hey, we can't have this panic with people buying up these masks. And we didn't do anything to prevent, to stock up on these masks before. So, could you help us out by lying to the American people? Even though, we know from interviews that Trump had back in February that he knew. He fucking knew a lot about the virus that he said in interviews that he would not say publicly. He told people bold-faced lies from his rallies that he never stopped having because he doesn't care about people. the little people. He's like, a couple people going to my rallies are going to die. That's okay because, I need the votes. Well, I bet you he could have probably used about 265,000 votes right now from the people that died. But, yeah. I don't know that, after having gone through what they went through, even if they lived, that they would have voted for him. But some of them would. The cult of 45 is strong. It's hard for them to get out of that mentality, even if they catch the virus. Sometimes it's not enough to change their mind, even in the worst cases. Some of them have been dying in hospitals in denial that they even have the virus. Saying, I can't die, this is no worse than the flu. There's news stories about that. They echo in my head. Healthcare workers are now getting substandard masks, not N95 masks, just any old mask that hospitals can get. And the shortage of N95 masks is still going on. They're getting crappy Chinese-made paper masks, They do prevent a little bit of the water droplets getting out, but yet they're not as good as the N95 mask. And in a healthcare setting, those people need that type of mask the most because they are the most likely to come into contact with it. So, them not getting support in that way, running out of gowns, running out of face shields and whatnot, it's the federal government has abandoned us. In the face of the $1,200 that we were supposed to, I guess, grease ourselves through the last 9 months with, because that's, what they figure needed to be given to us. other countries like Germany and the United Kingdom, they've been paying like 80% of workers' wages and trying to keep businesses afloat, and they're trying to preserve jobs that way. You should have seen Canada's stimulus. It was like 2,000 Canadian dollars a month for a couple months, and then they revisited the issue, and yeah. When I heard that, I was like, "What's the rate of loonies to U.S. dollars again?" They still, even with the exchange rate, they did better than us. Fucking Canada. I was raised on American exceptionalism, and to think that they're doing better than us hurts. It causes a lot of cognitive dissonance in my head to think that we are the worst country at handling this virus. We have a quarter of the deaths belong to the United States of America. We're number one in that. It's just... I'm still amazed that Trump had not been removed by his own cabinet for being, so inept and obviously losing his fucking mind. To the point where now they're going to have to drag him out of the White House screaming and crying like a baby. He just tweeted today, "There's no way we didn't win." I'm like, what the fuck? And then trending right after that was yes way. It's still going on. The denial in his head. And that's more important to him than the virus. I mean, he's golfing, taking breaks to go on golfing trips while people are dying from this virus. He's abandoned us. He made the governors responsible for each of their states, and then wouldn't reimburse them for the costs that they would incur from being responsible. He would reimburse their costs federally because you're on your own. You're abandoned. Fucking food lines. Let me tell you. Lines for people to just get a box of food. You've seen the news, probably. I've been in a food line before, and I don't want to go back to that, but I feel for all the people there, and there's no shame. In fact, if you live in the Denver area and you come across a hard time this winter and you need a sandwich, hit me up. I will probably do a drive-by where I'm no closer than 20 feet from you, but I'll drop you off a sandwich. Maybe a couple cans of soup. It was 9 months ago that a nurse that I know actually posted it on Facebook. Hey, if anyone is short on food, let me know. And I don't know how bad it's going to get this winter, but here's hoping we all make it through without losing too many pounds. You know? There's lines for testing. On top of the food lines, like if you're just driving along, you see a line, you don't know if they're waiting for food or waiting for getting a test. Because, even 9 months later, there's been no push for mass training of healthcare workers with a federal program. None of that. So people are basically left with the healthcare workers that we had at the start of this pandemic, which continues to decline just a little bit more each week. Just like people's savings accounts. Because we've been abandoned. Trump wouldn't supply ventilators to blue states. He threatened that he wasn't going to give them to the blue states, but luckily our protocols for treating the virus don't rely as heavily on ventilators anymore, and we're doing good in that respect so far. There are some people that still need ventilators and hospital rooms, which are filling up fast this week. Because we didn't have a federal plan to expand hospital coverage, like taking over existing nearby hotels, maybe, with federal money, so that we could have annexes to the hospital, just, rent out the whole hotel next to it, and then you've got yourself some extra beds. There's no federal program for this. Because there's no federal leadership, because they abandoned us. Meanwhile, the downplaying of the virus from Trump is still strong, and a bunch of my fellow citizens still think that all of this is overblown, and they've managed to politicize wearing a mask, where not wearing a mask means that you believe in freedom. I have seen people do a lot better with it in the last few months, like in videos. I don't get out much, but even at Trump rallies, you could see maybe at least 10% of people wearing a mask, and not being harassed for it by everyone else, but, there's a good number of people not wearing masks. And the White House canceled plans to send everyone a mask. Like, there was a plan for them to send people masks in the mail, and somehow that plan got canceled. That would have been the best thing they could have done, And they're like, wait, no. The blue states are dying right now, and not so much the red states. So let's not send out masks. And then now, what we had that looked like a second wave was actually the red states getting it in the Midwest. When you look at our national numbers, it looks like we already had a second wave. No. What happened was the blue states got it, and then the red states got it, and it made when you put the aggregate together, it made it look like a false second wave. What we're about to see over this winter is going to be brutal. What we've already seen has been brutal. By the end of the year, we're easily going to hit 300,000 deaths. Easily. It's just about how much more are we going to have? Because we don't have any federal guidance, because we're abandoned. And half the people are not taking this seriously. And then there was the taxes thing. Trump kicked the can down the road to where we didn't have taxes withheld from our paychecks, those of us who still have employment, in order to do like a backdoor stimulus package, right? Basically put money in people's hands by not taking the tax withholdings, but didn't bother making it so that those taxes wouldn't be due at the end of the year. No, it's just like robbing Peter to pay Paul in order to look better politically right before the election. But at the end of the year, you still made the same amount of money, still owe the same amount of taxes, but you didn't have as much withholding, so you're going to have a payment due. And it's going to be big for a lot of people. That's not good financial management. I would expect better from Republicans, honestly. I would never expect them to allow that to happen, because there's going to be a lot of people that the IRS is going to have to chase down for that money that they didn't have in their withholdings, and don't have to be able to pay their own taxes at the end of the year. Also, during the campaign, people kept hearing that Biden would raise taxes on everyone making over $400,000, and the Republicans are saying no, he's lying. He's going to raise taxes for everyone. Well, it's Trump's tax plan that was passed in 2017 that's going to raise taxes for everyone making under $75,000 next year. And with his obstructionist Senate still in place, we're going to be left holding the bag. Basically, Trump was kicking the can down the road already before the pandemic, and it's all going to hit us next year. All of it. And we'll be abandoned. He won't even be in office to see the destruction that he wrought on the next year. That's... wow. And then there's the rule that you don't have penalties for taking money out of your 401k right now. They lifted those penalties to the end of the year. In case you need some money, you can draw on your own retirement fund. Again, robbing Peter to pay Paul. But you won't have any, of the normal penalties for withdrawal if you choose to do so. We'll take that away. But if you could just, spend the money that you meant for it to be for your retirement, so that we don't have to do any relief stimulus at all, please do that. That's what they're saying to us. We're basically abandoned. This year, when people did taxes at the beginning of this pandemic, because they're due usually in April, tax payments were delayed to July 15th. They weren't waived. You still do the same amount of money, but they gave you a couple more months to come up with the cash if you owed. That was nice of them. I'll give them that. They pushed it back to July 15th. And then started collecting, with the pandemic still in full swing and getting worse. They gave tax rebates for individuals and expansions of unemployment insurance coverage that on paper looks really good, but those tax rebates happen to benefit more, the wealthy, and the expansion of unemployment insurance coverage. Most of that was done not at a federal level. It was on the state level, and some of these states, we have people that, by all means, they qualify for unemployment insurance and have qualified for months, but they just cannot get through on the unemployment line to, start their claim. They've put in, and they're just they have no money that has come to them. We had for a while, people were getting an extra $600 because of the first stimulus bill. They were getting, if you were on unemployment, you got an extra $600. And then that ran out. They didn't extend it with a second stimulus package. They didn't pass the HEROES Act. It's still sitting right there, unpassed. And so the Republicans are, now that the election's over and they know that they're not going to have the presidency, they're like really, digging their heels in, and they're like, nope, we'll maybe offer you like a $500 billion package. None of these like trillions of dollars that you're asking for. And yeah. Abandoned. They don't care about us. So they also they passed some like carryover of tax losses and refundable tax credits for payroll taxes, and they loosened interest deduction rules, and basically a lot of rules that help out people who are usually more wealthy. If you're the kind of person who has to take the standard deduction on your income tax every year, none of this shit matters to you, because the poorer you are, the less they care. You're abandoned at all these levels, but the poorer you are, the more abandoned you are. Yeah. There was a mismanagement of the $750 billion that was supposed to be in like loans to small businesses so that they would support payroll costs, and there were so many businesses that needed that money that didn't get it. And their need is there. They can measure it, like by all the applications they got that they had to deny because the money ran out. Right? So they know how many businesses need the money or they're going to close. They know which ones, are the wealthy ones and which ones are just not going to be there next year if they don't get that money. And they're just gridlocked. They don't want to give the other side a win. The other side might take credit for the stimulus is such a horrible thought that they are willing to let Americans suffer. When I say federally, I mean the legislature too. They've abandoned us. They needed to get it done, and they didn't. Here in Denver, the DMV's closed again, indefinitely. People were driving around with a lot of paper in their windows and stuff that said that they had registered their car, but the DMV is just closed. It's taking a look at the structure of a DMV anyway. It's like the worst possible place for the transmission of viruses. It's a large lobby filled with people waiting around randomly, and one person gets up, another person sits down. It's just like, and sometimes it's standing room only in there. It gets so packed, and horrible design. And they're closed, so a lot of my clients that are trying to get their driver's licenses back, they're having difficulty with that. And I realize that's one of the most local things that you wouldn't think that I'm blaming the federal government on this, but like the fact that we're having this surge with the lack of leadership in this pandemic, the fact that our country is the worst at it, I attribute the DMV closing in response to that as being something that I also blame the federal government for, even though, I guess on a local level, we could have had someone try to keep it open, but then I disagree with that. But, yeah. Waterworld. It's a theme park in Denver. It's not well known. It's not actually a very good one. But, wasn't open over the summer, but they were able to find a use for it. I drove by it the other day, and at first I saw these lights, and I thought maybe they were making like a Christmas lights thing to drive through, trying to, be, as business savvy as they could be, and make lemonade out of lemons, and just try to make a little Christmas thing so that they could raise money to keep Waterworld open. Then I got closer, and we drove up on the entrance, and it was a COVID testing site. They turned Waterworld into a COVID testing site, and they just had a bunch of Christmas lights anyway. But yeah, what I thought would have been there as far as that socially distanced Christmas lights show, they're going to actually have one of those at Bandimere Raceway, and it costs $30 per car, because there's not a lot to do for Christmas, and a lot of places that would have normally had events running, like Bandimere might have had a demolition derby or 3 this season, and that's not happening because you can't have people in the stands. So they're having drive-through things. And so this Christmas, there's not much else to do except for, get in line, pay some money to look at people's Christmas lights. That's where we're at. Our hospitals being at capacity The surge hasn't really even hit yet, and they're already at capacity. And there's no federal plan to help with any of that. And this is the most horrible part about that is, okay, the places where there are the most mask holes, the anti-maskers that think that if you're not wearing a mask it means you have more freedom, right? Those places, they correlate with not the big cities. You know, the politic that drives that is the more rural areas where there is less hospital infrastructure to meet all the demand of the stupid people who are going to need hospital rooms because they weren't wearing a mask. And the invectives of the president in his speeches from his rallies are what drives that. It's from his lips is where this problem comes. Goes from his lips to their ears. That's where they're getting the idea that they don't need to be wearing masks. He, on the White House lawn, held his RNC nomination speech, and you could look out on the White House lawn and see how they did not require everyone to wear a mask. None of his rallies have been masks required. Because he doesn't care. He's indifferent to the suffering of American people. You know, I would say, in his mind, he probably thinks that in this time he needs to show strength. But what I want to see is one fucking tear for 250,000 people dead. Show me a fucking tear. Don't get the virus, go to the fucking hospital, and then try to have a fucking public showing like, oh, it's nothing. The doctors had to fucking stop him from doing that. The compromise was him driving around with his motorcade so he could wave and spread the virus out that way. In the time that he should have been quarantined right after he got out of the hospital, he had an event at the White House where he was visibly not right. Okay? Coughing. And he was up on a stage. He was a certain distance away from them. He should have been inside. But him putting off the message of, you don't have to worry about the virus. You know, I got it. You guys can get it. It's nothing. Don't worry about it. That's what's important to him. Because really, the virus and his ineptitude in handling this pandemic is what lost him the election. He knows it. It shows his ineptitude. There's no federal program for paid time off to reimburse companies for when somebody gets the virus and then, you know, they have to go on paid time off. If they don't have that time, they're not getting paid at all. Right? But also, their coworkers who came in contact with them also have to quarantine and then get tested to come back to work, that burns their paid time off. Right? The whole reason why these workers are in harm's way is because of the ineptitude of the federal government in the first fucking place. You got customers coming in. Some of them are going to have the virus. Now that the problem has gotten this fucking bad because of Trump's ineptitude, now the workers are having to spend their own PTO without any federal program helping out with that. Now, I saw the program in Colorado that's supposed to help out with that, and I know a lot of employers, for a lot of people that I know, have found ways around the program to give people, an extra bit of PTO, because basically it's falling back on the employers to pay for it. So, whereas there's good intent there, there's not a lot of good follow through. And the reason why is because there's no federal guidance on that. These are like states doing it, if they're doing it at all. I've had some of my own scares, and that's come out in my YouTube videos where, Misty had to go back to work for a day, and it just so happened on the one day that she was required to go back to work in person. We're both telehealth workers. That one day that she went back there, somebody tested positive shortly thereafter, and she was in contact with that person that day. So we were quarantined in our house here, and then, what goes through your mind as you're like looking for symptoms that aren't there, when you don't have the virus. It's a sort of trauma that you're putting yourself through. I used to get this when I worked in emergency rooms and detoxes with homeless people. Whenever anyone found lice or bed bugs on the clients, just hearing the word bed bugs would put me in this mental state where every little hair bend, the hair on my wrist here, every little time that a hair bent a little bit from like the wind would send me into a panic. And I would say that to my coworkers. I'm in that mood right now. Every little hair bend is gonna just get me. That's what I was going through again in the days that we had quarantine here in our house, on the possibility of us maybe having it because of that exposure. And so now I'm a little bit more aware that even those who don't get it, when they have a scare, when they were around somebody who later gets it and then they're wondering if they get it, this is multiplying the trauma of the virus. And seeing people who they're part of the cult of 45, and they're out there just acting like nothing's wrong and it's all a hoax. They're out there, in places that are simple as just the gas station. You'll see them, and there's nothing you can say to them. They are set in their ways that they do not need to wear a mask. even though in my state that it is mandated right now in public places. They're just not going to do it. Because Trump. Because no guidance on a federal level. That's why. Worse than that, the opposite of guidance. Misguidance. And because of that, I can't go to a public place. I'm in the middle of my grad school, and I'm not able to go to a library because of the cult of 45. Those mask holes have all the libraries closed indefinitely. Thank goodness for ebooks, huh? Thank goodness for the internet. I'm not talking a lot right now about the things I'm thankful for, but I am thankful for those things. And I don't know what I was thinking about, like, expecting more from the federal government's response. There are still thousands of people in Puerto Rico who don't have a home after Hurricane Maria. There are still people in Flint, Michigan without clean drinking water. My family in Lake Charles, Louisiana were hit by 2 hurricanes, and luckily the tail end of their federal response will be a different administration. And also in my family, luckily, some of my cousins have businesses that are directly related to construction, so they're getting a lot of work right now. At least that's a silver lining. But yeah. I don't know why I would expect better, because I see the ineptitude of the federal government, especially during conservative administrations. We saw this with Hurricane Katrina during Bush's time in office. The response sucked. Meanwhile, Trump is golfing. I would be in favor of banning golf from all elected officials from here on out at this point. I don't even think that they need to have the vacations that they have. I think if you're going to be in public office, you should be working the whole time you're in office. Congress went into recess without giving us a stimulus package. We voted them in, and now they ignore us. We are fucking abandoned. We have no leadership. Because our president mocked the virus and said it's like the flu. And it's a hoax, and China and all that. We still hear echoes of that out of our dumbest. And they voted for him again. Even those that realized that all that shit that he said was wrong, there's a bunch of them were like, yeah, but, the alternative is socialism, so, him being President Pussy Grabber and being the most racist president we've ever had, those aren't deal breakers. Because, who wants health care? It was horrible for me when I had to do things without help, so I think everyone else will build more character if they don't have help from all the programs that the Democrats want. It was hard for me, so I think it should be hard for everyone else. That sort of fucking mindset. After 9/11, which previously was the biggest world event of my life, like before 9/11 and after 9/11, the world was different. There's a fine line in my life that the history of the world changed on 9/11. Like, take off your shoes at airports changed. That's how changed it was. And this is now the 9/11 of the next generation. Nothing's going to be the same after this. And yet we're not coming together. Americans have no unity. We're more divided than we've ever been. And it's because we have no federal leadership. God. I remember how unified we were in wanting to respond to 3,000 people dying on that day. And we've had a bunch of days where just like back-to-back days, we have 1,000 and 2,000 people dying each day. Worldwide, not just American numbers, worldwide, we're up to like 8,000-9,000 dying a day. That's 3 9/11s popping off in the world every fucking day. And it's getting worse. We're still headed towards that second surge. And there are people in our country that, because of the misguidance from the president, they don't realize that everything is different now. They think it's all a hoax. When Trump was elected, it truly did become a post-fact world. And for a guy like me that enjoys the truth and enjoys facts and logic and reason, it's made my life very difficult of late. I'm not very thankful for that. We're all going to have to cope with the trauma and the aftermath, which I'll be right there with my clients, and they're coping. And I don't know that by the end of my career, I'm going to hear the end of it. Here I am 20 years later talking about 9/11 as my measuring stick of how bad something can be. And I'm still feeling the effects of what that changed in my life 20 years later. And what I'm seeing is 3 9/11s a day happening in the world. The world is going to change so much. And it needs to, so that this shit doesn't happen again. If you have anything that you want to add to my list of woes about how the federal government in America is inept, just go ahead and leave a comment, and we can commiserate But I think I'm done with my ramble for the night. Thank you all for being a shoulder to cry on. You've always been there for me.